Ladies, gentlemen, and miniatures of all ages, with Grounded 2's early access now out for a week, it's time to talk about one of my favorite things in this type of game, which are builds. And while there is a ton of content in the currently available section of the game, a lot of the equipment is just sort of general low-tier stat stick type stuff to get you started. A good portion of it, along with many mutations, are very niche or situational in their perks, but some of this stuff has a lot of potential power to offer the player if you stick it together in the right ways. And so today we're going to talk about what I believe to be the best builds for each class archetype currently at this stage of early access for Grounded 2, with the note that I will be doing one-handed and two-handed weapons as separate builds for the fighter type archetype so that we can cover both options for people who prefer either one. That said, starting off with fighter and with one-handed, this one is a supremely defensive build, but with a lot of offensive potential. The main purpose of it is for blocking, and that's honestly mostly because if you are using a one-handed weapon purposefully, you are doing it because you either want a shield or a torch in your offhand. That said, starting with the weapon itself, the main one that I want to talk about today is the Pinch Whacker. This is a named weapon, a unique weapon, and it is a one-handed smashing weapon. Solid damage and speed on the weapon itself as far as the stats, very solid stun damage and good crit, but then also a unique perk that makes it so the final hit of the 3-hit attack combo makes it emit an AoE blast of shock damage, which also seems to apply a load of stun too. So for pretty much anything that isn't a single target fighting boss, which means it applies to most things in the game, this weapon is incredibly good just for clearing loads of things out, on top of doing lots of damage just in general, and synergizing with the way that the Smasher mutation works when we get to that too. As for how to get this weapon, it is in the fire pit zone on your map. If you zoom in this area, you will see this purple can. Directly east of the purple can is a hole in the wall leading to a tunnel with some scorpions in it, but at the end of it there is a wall that you can break open with a bomb. Break it open and this weapon will be sitting on the chair in that little room for you to pick up. That said, it is always good to have a backup weapon, and for this type of playstyle I generally recommend having some low tier bonus spears, as you can just sort of chuck them for a ranged option, or use them in melee whenever you're against an enemy that is resistant to the smashing damage type. For your armor, I highly recommend the Ladybug set for this. As mentioned earlier, if you are using a one-handed weapon, it's probably so you can either use a torch or a shield, and so we can lean into the defensive side of this quite significantly, we're using the Ladybug armor. This is because it has the typical fighter armor skill, of course, which is just higher threat generation for melee attacks, but this also has the bargain block perk on every piece, which reduces the stamina cost of blocking attacks, either with shields or just the weapon itself if you are holding a torch at the same time. Having all three pieces of Ladybug armor equipped also gets you the Scarlet Embrace set bonus perk. This gives you a slight heal after a successful block. It basically activates a mini bandage effect. This helps for survivability long term in a longer fight, and then if you pair this with the Ladybug shield as well, which absorbs all damage even on a non-perfect block because it is a heavy type shield, this essentially just makes you very, very difficult to do damage to. You get a set with a lot of defensive power to play around with, and as long as you just hold right click, if the enemy even looks like they might be thinking about an attack, you probably won't take damage unless it's like a ground effect or an AoE or something. This then opens up some offensive options to play around too because of the amount of defensive power you have. For your trinket on the set, I recommend the Blistering Boiler for a pop of sizzle damage and buildup on your 3-hit attack combo finisher, which is the same time that you trigger your big shock effect, and this means every time you do a combo finisher, you do a load of damage in this setup. It's quite a strong effect against anything that's not resistant to it. This is an RNG drop from Bombardier Beetles, and until you have it happen to drop, the Astonishing Acid crafted trinket as well is a pretty good replacement, a pretty good substitute in the meantime. It is a similar effect, also triggering on the 3-hit combo finisher, but it's just standard damage instead of spicy and sizzle buildup, and definitely not quite as strong. For the mutations on this setup, I'm showing you this part on creative so you can see the full effects, as I don't have everything unlocked on my main survival save completely, but due to different maximum mutation amounts, I will do this as a priority list. Highest priority for this build is Frenzy. You unlock this at the end of the currently playable story in early access, and this basically makes it so you have a shorter perfect block window, but melee attacks can trigger rage. This gives you passive health regen and increases your damage. But because we are using the Ladybug shield and the Ladybug set, your regular block is so strong that perfect blocks aren't necessary to use, and that removes the actual negative part of this mutation and lets you purely get the very strong positive. Second priority is a bit of a toss-up, but I would lean towards the Smasher mutation with this setup, specifically the fighting style mutation. This gives you increased stun damage with clubs, which is what we're using. This lets you immobilize enemies more frequently, which makes it easy to do lots of free damage, but also once you reach tier 3 on this mutation, you get the Club Master perk as well for bonus damage with clubs against stunned enemies, creating a sort of self-fulfilling loop, making it easier to stun enemies and then doing more damage when they are stunned. Block attacks, stun enemies with the club, then beat the crap out of them. The next mutation in line, which is arguably even with that one, is Trapper Peeper. This is an awkward one to unlock, as you basically just have to peep bugs and then kill them over and over. Sometimes you'll get lucky and find a gold card when you do this, and if you find enough gold cards, you'll get this mutation, and if you get more gold cards, you can upgrade it. The mutation itself gives you increased critical damage though, so if you have any amount of crit chance at all, this becomes a pretty solid option. Then the final priority, which could be increased in value depending on the enemy that you are fighting, is Cardio Fan. This is purely increased stamina and increased stamina regeneration speed, which does matter most for giving you a larger stamina pool to block with before you start to take damage. The majority of fights in the game shouldn't be able to do enough damage in one combo to force you into that setup, because you should have enough stamina and enough block power to just sort of tank through it. Only like the toughest of bosses in the game right now can make you have to dive into Cardio Fan as a sort of requirement. So this one is really only needed when it's needed, and of course, just for the sake of mentioning it, these are pure efficiency choices. They are pure offensive power choices. There are plenty of niche situations where you might want to replace at least one of these depending on what you're doing, but that pretty much covers it for the one-handed weapon build. Next up, let's talk best build for two-handed weapons. For the weapon itself, there are technically two options, but the one that I recommend more if you're only going to make one is the Mantis Blade. This is the best raw stats on a two-handed weapon, and with it not relying on an element at all, it is equally strong in most situations. It has high stun value for a sword and decently high crit chance as well, with pretty standard speed for a two-hander and slightly higher raw damage than anything else in the category. The other option is the Spicy Coltana, a bit less stun value, a bit less raw damage, but it has the Sizzling Attacks perk to apply sizzle buildup with your hits. This makes it immediately stronger against anything that is weak to spicy and sizzle, but otherwise the Mantis Blade will just absolutely do the job in every situation. For the Mantis Blade specifically, you need Praying Mantis parts and Lingonberry leather, which are later game materials to find in the current stuff that we have early access to. As for the armor set on this one, the best by a good margin for fighters, offensively speaking, is the Snail armor set, but with a bit of a caveat. Currently, there are 17 Garden Snail fragments that you can get per playthrough in survival mode, because we don't currently have the means to unlock tier 3 Busting Omni tool. That is the tool that would be required to open up snail shells, so that means the only fragments that we can currently get in survival mode are the ones that you can get from crates that you can find within the world itself. Slight exploration and story spoilers here that you can skip ahead if you don't want to hear them yet, but for those who are sticking around, let's talk about where the snail fragments come from. They all come from around the statue area of the map. A lot of them are inside of the network center. Some of them are right here inside this ranger outpost here, ranger outpost statue right here at the northeast side of the ceremony area. That's where you can find 3 of them in a chest in here, and then we can also find another 2 in this pipe right here that you can see on your way into the statue to begin with. You can find this spot. It's very clear on your map. There's a hole in the middle there. You jump into the hole, you go down, there's a pneumatic tube, you go through the tube, then you take a left within this facility to find a room with a chest. Inside the chest, 2 more fragments. The rest of them are all actually inside of the network center itself, inside of the facility that's up in the statue. They aren't too hard to find. As long as you actually go through every path within the network center, you will find all of them. All that to say, you can get 17 snail fragments right now. It takes 12 snail fragments to craft the full armor set. You need garden snail eye stalks as well, which are a rare drop from the snails themselves, so you do have to kill some snails to get this. And then you also need lingonberry leather, acid glands, and silk rope. The main issue with this is that the snail armor pieces also require snail fragments to repair, so if you run out of durability, you will only have 5 remaining snail fragments of repair fodder until they eventually update the game to add tier 3 busting. The slight workaround for that is when you upgrade armor, it actually fully repairs it. So you technically get 1 repair per upgrade, but then also the repairs from those 5 fragments. This means that you cannot use this set indefinitely, but it's incredibly strong while it is available, and now we can talk about what it actually does. First up, this is tier 3 armor. It has fantastic defensive stats, but the base perk on this just applies stun damage when you block an attack. This is of course solid in itself, but the real meat here is the 3-piece set bonus that you get for having every piece of snail armor equipped together, which is called Retaliation retaliation. What this does is give you a stacking buff every time that you block an attack, up to 5 stacks. Each stack gives you increased damage and speed of charging for your charged attacks. This also adds a shockwave effect when it activates, doing a bit of AoE damage when you do it. So basically, as you block attacks, your main defense with a two-handed weapon is just perfect blocks anyways. You will gain a buff for charged attacks, which are your strongest attacks anyways, and apply stun effectively too, and it makes it into an AoE, which can attack multiple enemies if you're being swarmed. This is just a really strong effect. As for the trinket, we are going for charged attacks a lot with this one, so the best option is the Shivering Scale trinket. This is a random drop from any blue butterfly enemy in the game, and so it makes it so your charged attacks create a pop of flat fresh damage, and also applied chill buildup to your enemies as well. So this is just a really nice synergy for charged attacks that also applies a really strong debuff if an enemy lives long enough to have it stack up. As for mutations in this setup, we'll be sort of doing a priority order once again. Highest priority is Trapper Peeper. The increased crit damage is just such a big deal if you have any crit chance. The Mantis Blade has decent default crit chance on it, so it helps out quite a bit. Parry Master I'm a big fan of for this setup. It gives you stamina back on perfect blocks, which then lets you attack more often too, and with big weapons that consume a lot of stamina per swing, this is a pretty lovely combo. Especially as, again, perfect blocks are your main defense when playing this way anyways. Third priority I would say depends on preference, and it's either the Blade Master fighting style mutation, which makes enemies deal reduced damage after being hit by a sword, making your survival a bit easier, but this also gets the Sword Master perk at higher tiers to remove your stamina regen timer when hitting with swords, which is a pretty awesome combo as, again, stamina is quite important. And on the same note, of course, the other one I would say is near equal to that is Cardio Fan, just for good general stamina management practices. For a lot of combats, you can also get quite a bit out of the Ambush perk by doing a big charged attack as your opening hit before the enemy sees you, but this only applies when an enemy isn't immediately aggressive or if they haven't seen you yet, so it doesn't apply all the time, but it is a decent option in certain situations. Moving on, then, the fighter builds are honestly the most complex, so this should get simpler from here. With the new hotness, the brand new weapon type in Grounded 2, let's talk about dual wielding with the Rogue archetype. Specifically, the best weapons are the Wolfsbane. These are the ones made from wolf spider materials. They have just insane stats. They have the highest stats of any daggers, and some of the best stats of any weapon around. They apply venom buildup on hit as their special perk, which means that you get an extra punch for any longer fights like bosses and such, but a large point of this setup is that anything that isn't a boss should either die in a single hit or nearly die from a single hit, as this is a heavy ambush based setup. The armor set that we are pairing this with is the Orb Weaver armor set, as it has the Dual Dasher perk, which increases the damage of dual wield weapon dash strikes. The dash strike is a charge attack, which is our highest damage singular attack, and so the one that we want to ambush enemies with to begin with. As well, outside of the ambush itself, we get the Rogue armor perk for increased crit chance on the third tack of attack combos, the actual finisher, and the set bonus from Orb Weaver armor is critical momentum. This makes every hit against an enemy in combat give you increased crit chance up to 5 stacks. These stacks then drop off either if you get hit or when combat ends. So it doesn't quite help with the ambush part, but for things like bosses that survive past it, it will ramp up your damage very quickly in general. This armor then is just made from Orb Weaver materials, silk ropes, and caterpillar parts as well. For the trinket, I recommend either the Volatile Capacitor, which is a crafting recipe that's unlocked at brain power level 9. This adds flat shock damage to every attack you do. Our ambush setup with this is already strong enough that boosting our charged attacks even more is a bit unnecessary, with the better option for things with large health bars being to get the most out of general dagger combat so we can proceed to do lots of damage after the ambush if necessary. With daggers being the fastest attacking weapons, we want one of the 3 trinkets in the game that adds flat damage to every attack, as flat damage is more valuable depending on your attack speed. So the Volatile Capacitor is the best crafted trinket for this. Then for RNG, 2 other options are the Spectacular Spicy Shard, which is a random drop you can get when breaking spicy candies. This gives flat spicy damage on attacks, which is better, of course, against anything that is weak to spicy. Or there's also the Suspicious Mint, which is the same thing, except for fresh attacks, and this drops at random when you are breaking mint, so it is again another random chance one. Again, all 3 of these trinkets are basically the same concept, they just do different damage types, and of course, only one of them is craftable, so those are your considerations here. For mutations, number 1 on this setup by far is the Ambush mutation. This gives guaranteed critical hits against creatures that are unaware of you when you engage with them, and this also gives you a significant crit damage increase on ambushes with daggers specifically, which is our main goal here anyways. We also pick up Trapper Peeper as second priority mutation for the crit damage increase, as it is just nice and simply very good. Then the third priority is the fighting style mutation itself, Assassin. This gives increased crit chance for dash strikes with daggers, which doesn't help ambush, but does help general combat, especially as we have boosted dash strike damage in general. Dagger Master is unlocked at higher tiers of the mutation, and this makes kills with daggers increase crit chance for a short duration afterwards, but the base effect is the main one that we really want for this. Then fourth priority is personal choice, but I'm just a big believer in Cardio Fan for the massive amount of stamina management that it helps you with in general. Next up, we're going to go over our Ranger build today, and this is going to be a bit familiar from the last one, as the main purpose is again being an ambush focused build for super high damage on the first hit in combat, but we will also be quite functional outside of the first hit too, of course. And for the weapon itself, the ideal one for this is the unique named bow Bushwhacker. This has the unique perk Cheap Shot, which is a significant bit of bonus damage against enemies that have full health when you hit them, so it's basically an ambush synergy bow. This one is a bit of an oddball to find, so you want to start here at the opening to the hedge north of the snack bar area itself. Then I'll just show you the full path on screen to make it a bit easier. From this point here, you want to turn and cross the spiderweb bridge, and in this next section, you just want to continue to follow every spiderweb bridge that there is until you reach this higher up central branch. Then in the middle of the branch, there is a sort of back section of it that you can walk down to find a leaf on top with a chest. Open the chest and the bow is sitting inside. That said, this is a build where you would want to have multiple bows, because after that first opening shot of combat against anything that survives the unique perk will not actually do anything anymore. So after that first shot of combat, you would actually want to ideally swap to the Wolf Stringer bow, which is the only tier 3 bow that we have right now. It has just generally higher raw stats than the Bushwhacker, and so you want to use that when the actual perk isn't relevant. For the armor set on this one, this is the only one that doesn't use a full set because of the existence of the Marksman helmet. This is crafted with crow feathers, blueberry leather, and silk ropes, and the main reason that we use this is because it has the bow attack unique perk, which is just a straight up attack bonus to all bow shots, which is actually quite a meaty bonus too. It is in fact stronger than the set bonus that you would get for wearing full grub armor, which is also a bonus to bow shots, but this one is just stronger. So this makes it worth wearing a non-full set to the only one of these builds. That said, the other two armor slots should still actually be grub armor, mostly just because the quick charge perk makes charging attacks faster, which then means that your overall damage over time is better as a result. And the only other option for a skill on ranger armor is B armor, which makes the perfect draw window longer. That only matters if you are missing your perfect draws to begin with, so it's technically not the best no matter how you put it. For the trinket, the Nifty Needle craftable trinket is the only technical damage increase, as it increases the damage of all charged shots, which all shots ideally should be no matter what. But I should also mention the existence of the fancy fleshing trinket, especially for after that first opening shot, where the specific damage of your shots matters less necessarily than the speed at which you charge them, because what this does is increase your speed of charge time on bow attacks even further. So Nifty Needle is the best for our setup for the ambush damage specifically, but this one is worth knowing about too, and it's just a random drop when you're breaking crow feathers anywhere in the park. For mutations, ambush whenever applicable, as it works incredibly well in our setup for the guaranteed crit on our opening attacks with the Bushwhacker. Trapper Peeper, again, if you have it, is just straight up increased crit damage, which is great, and we have multiple sources of increasing our crit damage. Then the Sharpshooter fighting style mutation, which again gives additional crit chance on fully charged bow shots, which is great even after your first opening shot, and it also has the Bowmaster perk for increased damage on perfectly charged bow shots too. This does help our opening ambush shot, and then fourth priority is again the personal choice in this setup, but I do recommend Cardio Fan just in general, especially as while using a bow, you cannot block, and this means that you'll be using the dodge function mostly to avoid attacks, and that chews through your stamina pretty quickly. Finally, then we have our Mage setups for the day, and this is the simplest one, but also the one that requires the most work, because it's essentially two separate builds that you have to maintain both of, as that's just how the candy staff weapon type sort of works. Candy staves, the way that they are made, are tied to a specific damage type each, and they pretty much just do that type of damage. The Scorching Orb is a spicy damage and sizzle buildup weapon, the Glacial Stinger is fresh damage and chill buildup, and you need to have both if you want to focus on candy staves as your main playstyle, because you want to be able to target different enemy weaknesses and avoid enemies that are resistant to one of your damage types when using these weapons. This also changes the armor that you want to use for each staff as well, and that said, outside of the crafted weapons, there is also a unique version of the Scorching Orb, which mostly just has increased crit chance as far as stat changes. The actual bonus perk doesn't affect combat, but it's just sort of nice to have too. As for how to get this, you need to get it from the center of the fire pit area, literally the fire pit itself. All the way at the center of the bottom of the fire pit, there is a little sort of bucket thing with two big charcoal rocks blocking it. You can bust them open with tier 2 bust, and then crouch through the opening to get the staff waiting to be picked up. It does require a fair amount of sizzle resistance to do it safely though. For the armor then, starting with the spicy damage setup specifically, you want the Bombardier armor set, the Sizzling set. This gives sizzle reduction, but it also has the Mage armor perk for reduced stamina cost on staff attacks. But what's important is the set bonus itself when you have all 3 pieces equipped, which is called Wizzy Wizard. This gives you a stacking effect when hitting enemies with your staff that increases your attack speed with staves up to 5 times. The stacks drop off if you take damage or if combat ends, so this can really up your damage if you are good at avoiding attacks. The main reason this set only applies to the spicy staff is that the fresh staff has a better armor set that is more unique to fresh damage, and this is the Butterfly armor set. This one's set bonus is a little bit funkier, which is after doing the 3-hit combo with your staff, you shoot out a fresh and chilling mist whenever you dodge, so it's an on-dodge damage effect. Also, the helmet has a unique perk called Parry or Barrier. This makes perfect blocks give you a barrier, which reduces the damage of the next hit that you take, stacking up to 3 times, but is removed whenever you take damage or exit combat. By itself, this is just a nice, neat defensive effect, but then combined with the other 2 pieces of Butterfly armor, both of them come with the Frosty Focus perk. This gives you increased fresh damage while Parry or Barrier is activated. So you basically get a perfect block, and then all fresh damage after that point from your staff is increased until you get hit, making it both a survivability and offensive boost all in one armor set. For the trinkets on this build, it's a little bit awkward because it's hard to know for sure what does and doesn't work with candy staves based on the visuals in the game, but theoretically the best one should be Blistering Boiler, because this makes the final hit of a 3-hit combo emit a sizzling blast wave, applying more sizzle, which obviously synergizes with the Scorching Orb and what you want to do with it in general. It doesn't specify that it has to be a melee weapon, and the staves do have a 3-hit combo, so I'm assuming this works, but it is a little bit hard to tell. For your mutations for this, the highest priority is the Whittle Wizard fighting style itself. Base effect makes both the sizzle and freeze debuff just stronger in their actual damaging effects, which are the main debuffs that you apply with each staff. And there's some of their greatest assets. At higher mutation tiers, you also get Staff Master, which is increased crit chance with your staff attacks against either frozen or sizzling foes. Next priority is Trapper Peeper. Again, crit damage increase is a big deal, and staves have decent base crit, and the fighting style mutation gives you moments of higher crit chance as well. Third priority, in my opinion, would be Parry Master for both weapons in general, as perfect blocks are your best source of defense, but especially so for the Glacial Sting setup, the fresh setup with the Butterfly armor, where you'll be purposefully trying to perfect block even more often anyways. Then fourth priority, again, personal choice, but I do just love a bit of cardio fan myself for the stamina management. That just about does it for today then, everyone. The strongest build for each weapon type that you can currently make at this stage of Grounded 2's early access. Some of the strongest equipment in the game and the strongest mutations all paired together into setups that are honestly pretty absurdly strong, considering we are at best using tier 3 equipment in a game that is looking to have up to tier 5 by the time it reaches full release. So I'm really interested to see both how the bugs scale up as time goes on and what new equipment will be added to the game too. I hope you've all enjoyed this then, and I hope it makes you the strongest teen in the park. Like if you liked the video, subscribe to the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.